Hi, Jordan. It's great to be talking to you, man. How are you doing today?
Doing very well. Excited to be talking about my new album that's coming out soon and all the fun things that I've got coming up.
Yeah, man, and your life is really, really filmed right now. Um, and the next thing is your brand new solo album, Permission to Fly, will be released in a couple of days, or in a few days. What can you say to your fans about this album?
Um, I think that they will be in for a nice treat. I tried to make an album that was not only very progressive, but also an album that would be really just uh, maybe easier to listen to or just enjoyable to listen to, even on the first listen. Sometimes when you listen to some of the progressive music that's out there today, it's very, very complex and takes a long time to really appreciate, or it's academic, or I don't know. Like I wanted to make an album that even when you listen to it the first time, you could really get a really nice vibe, and then also go back and maybe hear more things and understand some of the interesting rhythms and sound colors. But even on the first listen, I wanted the fans to go, "Oh, this is nice. I like this." So that was the idea.
Yeah, and I think you succeeded on that.
Oh, good.
And in your opinion, do you think you gave yourself permission to fly on the compositions on this album? Given
Yeah,
the title.
I wasn't worried about myself. I'm always flying. I called it that because I wanted to have make a musical offering to today's world, to kind of say, hey, it's a busy, crazy world. There's a lot going on every level, but it's okay to, in this case, listen to music and allow yourself to go on a journey and maybe put on some headphones or sit between the speakers and not do a million other things while you're trying to, just listen to music. Like put your phone like away for, an hour or whatever it is and go for the flight, go for the journey, because it's pretty, listening to music like that, I think is really special. And I think that it's a lost art form. I mean, like there's certain artists that I know care a lot about that. Like my friend Steven Wilson, he speaks about this kind of thing a lot. And I'm of the same mindset. Like, hey, this is something that not too many people are doing these days. They're just like making singles and people are just listening to this song here or this song there. But I think there's a beauty and there's something really magical about a whole album idea. And so that was part of the reason I called it Permission to Fly, to kind of almost like plant a seed, like go for it. Just like check it out and allow yourself to go on a nice flight journey.
Yeah, embark on this journey, and
Yeah,
it's
right, right.
yeah, yeah, that's a very good idea to name down like that, I think.
Cool,
And
man.
yeah, how was the composition process for this album? Did you change anything from your other albums that somehow different?
I don't always write music the same way. Sometimes it'll start with a bass line. Sometimes it starts with a groove. Sometimes it starts with a piano improvisational thing that I did. All different ways. Sometimes I'll start by just writing things down with pencil and paper. So, but one of the key ways that I got this whole album started is that I was collecting musical ideas at the piano. Like I'd feel a vibe, an emotion. I'd sit and I'd play something and I go, oh, that's nice. And I'd capture it. Maybe it's just four measures or eight measures of music or whatever, but I'd have different bits. And then when I set out to do this album, I was kind of like, oh, I've got this folder with all these things in it. Let me go back and listen. And I had about 30 or 40 different little clips. And I worked with my daughter Ari, who also wrote the lyrics for the album, and we went through all of the clips and we decided on which ones we felt were the most kind of like magical, or which just had a great vibe. And so then I took those and I went, we picked like four of them or whatever, and I brought them into the studio. I was like, oh, this is cool. Maybe this could be a chorus. And then, of course, you got to write the whole song around it. So then the crafting begins, and then it's again just trying different things at the piano, trying some different chords, maybe improvising a little bit, or getting an idea for a rhythmic feel for it, and then applying the chords to it. It comes in so many different ways. As like a classical musician turned a rock, electronic, keyboardist. There's a lot of possibilities with the way that things can be written. Sometimes I'll put down a simple line, and I put it into my sequencer, and I can see it in musical notation, and while it's playing, and because I can see it, then I can kind of arrange the counterpoint of the harmonies. So I'll be very visual that way, either if it's on paper with pencil and paper, and I line up notes and I see how how counterpoint is going or how voice leading is moving, or I'll do it on the computer where I'll play something in and then I can see the notes and go, okay, now I'll put the other notes where I want them within that score. So yeah, and that's kind of like the process I'll do. That is my my solo music compositional process.
Yeah, and your last four albums after Wired for Madness were just you on the piano, and I think that's kind of different for composing, right? Or is it the same process?
Yeah, a lot of the albums, a lot of the things I've done on piano, sometimes they're more improvisationally based. So yeah, there's definitely a difference in the approach.
Yeah, and what makes you to keep making this kind of albums, apart from just you being on the piano?
So you're asking what makes me want to do the albums that are more like rock kind of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, my my home base, if you will, where I come from is from the piano, and I just feel like there's a lot that I like to express in particular ways at the piano, and that's why I make these piano albums. Sometimes my piano style goes into more like a flowing. People say it almost sounds like imagine like waterfalls or something, in the style, and that's really important to me. So I like to do that. But I also, have this other side of me that's very um, inspired by like progressive rock and certain electronic music, and that's important to express as well, because as somebody whose whole life is music, and I don't do a lot of other things. I mean, it's important to me to kind of get out my musical thoughts and emotions in the style swimming in my brain, like when I do a rock based solo album, it's very much connected with my progressive kind of like roots. I tip my hat, if you will, very proudly to, you know, my influences like Keith Emerson, Rick Wakeman, Patrick Moraz, and the amazing progressive music that kind of brought that genre to life, like Yes, Genesis, King Crimson, ELP. So yeah, it's just it for me. It's important to me to express myself in all these different ways. And even though like my group Dream Theater is a rock, band doing like prog metal, still within that rock genre, I feel like there's something very personal that's important to me. That's different than Dream Theater, different kind of spirit, different kind of stylistic blend that I want to present and make albums. That's why I've done this, now for a while.
Yeah, yeah, it's been for a while now. Do you divide like those ideas between, oh, this is for my solo project, this is for Dream Theater? How do you make that decision and that division between the two projects?
Yeah. Well, pretty much it's decided because of the timeline. Like I know that like I did my solo album before I went into the studio with Dream Theater. And I wasn't really composing music for Dream Theater before that period of time came about, right? So within the window of time that I have to do my solo album, that's the ideas and the stuff that I'll be working on for that. And I generally apply that. Occasionally there's something that, oh, I didn't use that one, but that's really cool. And I could maybe say, oh, that could be nice. Maybe I'll show that to the guys, whatever. But it really is, it's kind of separate. It just works out that way.
Yeah, and right now that we are talking about Dream Theater, right now you are preparing for your 40th anniversary tour. What can
Yeah.
you reveal about that? What are you preparing exactly?
Um, so we have this huge tour coming up. It starts in the UK. I think it's October 20th at the O2 Arena, and we're just putting together a really great set list. Mike Portnoy, who of course is back in the band, he wrote the set list. So I have a lot of work to do because some of these songs I haven't played in a long time. And as the keyboardist is always programming and, you know, all the steps to get ready, is a lot of, it'll be a big night of music. So yeah, it's going to be cool.
Yeah, and what can you say about that set list that my partner prepared?
Not too much, really, because I want it to be a surprise. It's going
Yeah,
to be
obviously.
good because he's really good at it. So it'll be a nice, you know, kind of view of a lot of the work that we think people will want to hear.
Yeah, it looks really, really promising. And you know, this tour will be in Lisbon in on the 16th of November. What are your
Yeah.
expectations for that show?
I expect everybody to be blown away. I think it's going to be great. We're putting, you know, in seriousness, but we're putting a lot of time and effort and thought into our live performance. This is going to be a really big tour for us with Mike coming back and all the big shows, and there'll be a lot of visual elements and just show performance elements that are happening that will be really exciting. I think that everybody will be noticing a lot of cool stuff, and um you know, it's always fun to come over to Lisbon and where the audience is always energized, you know, and it's gonna be a good night, I feel.
Yeah, I think too. I mean, it wouldn't work any other way. You know, you
Right.
already said that you were in studio with Dream Theater. Um, is the new album ready? What can you say about that?
Yeah, so
Not
it's
much
being
again, I
prepared
guess.
now. We all finished all our performances on the new album, and now it's going through all the processes of, you know, mixing and mastering and producing and all this kind of stuff. We don't have a release date yet, but I'm sure soon we'll be saying something about that. But I will say that you know, I've been able to kind of listen back to some of the music that we've done and super excited about it. One of the things I'm excited about is that um, I realized again that, you know, the drumming, the drummer does have a really large influence on the way the music feels. You know, there's definitely something when Portnoy plays, but also having him back and the really special things that he kind of brings to the process. I mean, he's not only a great drummer, he's also, you know, really, he has a lot of other skills that apply to the music creation process. And I'll sometimes when I speak about him and what he kind of brings in is like Mike is kind of like a movie director, you know, film guy, and he's always thinking like that, and he's very aware of all the different elements. And when you hear the album, everyone will know exactly what I mean. There's all kinds of cool stuff going on, and I think it's gonna make everybody really happy.
Yeah, and I think that's really what makes him apart. Not only being a great drummer, but that's really what makes him apart from other drummers in the world.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, going back to Permission to Fly, because that's your solo album and our focus here. You already said that you wrote the lyrics with your daughter. What does this album talk about lyrically?
Well, I didn't write any of the lyrics. My daughter Ariana wrote all the lyrics, and we actually produced a series of interviews that are going to be coming out soon, where we're in discussion, and she's talking about just what you're asking me because she's the lyricist. I wrote the music, so yeah, there's only so much I can say about it. Her only instructions for me were that I wanted to make sure that the words had a very nice sound and feel to them with the music, so they didn't kind of sound like they were just like pasted on top of the music, that they all musically sound wise went with the phrasing. um but the topic, she each song is very different, but she decided to write about this larger topic, looking at kind of like the state of the world, and you know, and the what's going on, and you know, in our crazy world with the wars, and it's just a strange time. But not only the bad stuff, but also the good stuff. So she was kind of looking at the balance of things that's out there and crafting stories for each song that would relate to her bigger concept. So yeah, each song is a little bit, a little bit different. And people should tune into our father-daughter interview to find out more of kind of what makes the lyrics tick on the album, because I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I'm sure they will. Now, this is also your first album through Inside Out. How do you establish this connection? Was it somehow related to also Dream Theater? Because of it's the same label
Well,
now.
oh yeah, I mean, like I've known the guys at Inside Out for a long time, and we worked together. And when it came to doing this album, I wanted it to be really unique and special. And um, so, in talking to them, I felt like this would be a really good home for this album, because they really understand me and understand my style and are very supportive. And they were interested to put this album out. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. This is great. It just made sense. Um, but for this album, I wanted it to be very different. I wanted it to be an album that had a lot of songs on it. I wanted to find a singer that would be like symbiotic with my musical output. I felt very lucky to have found Joe Payne to sing on the album. He's a beautiful voice, and it's a great guy, and just very musically knowledgeable, and was able to not only do the things that I asked him to do, but he was able to add his own expression and his own vocal ideas and some of his own harmonies as well to the album, which was so welcome. It just extended it beyond anything that I would do by myself. And Darby Todd, played the drums, and he did a great job. I met him when we were on tour with the Dream Sonic tour with Devin Townsend and Animals as leaders. And so he, is a great drummer and nice guy. And so he did a great job on the drums. I had a friend of mine, Steve Jadayan, playing guitar, rhythm guitars, and joining me on some cool unisons and things like that. And Steve is an interesting guy because he's a dentist full time, but he's also a fantastic electric and acoustic guitar player. So he played like all the rhythm parts on the album. Worth mentioning as well is Bastian Martinez, who is from Chile. He's a young guy. He's like what you look at as like one of these next generation guitar players. Just like you watch him play and it's like, holy shit. Like, he was influenced by like John Petrucci and all these guys. And, it's just incredible what young people are doing with the guitar these days. So he played on a couple of songs and guest solos, specifically on Embers and Into the Lair. Embers, it was the first song I released. Into the Lair, you'll have to get the album to hear. And now I played 3 guitar solos on the album as well, because I've been enjoying playing the guitar, and it's been like, I call it a serious hobby for the last few years. And so while I wanted to do more, I realized when I got into working on the album that I didn't really have any like chops for like recording audio. I'm used to working in MIDI. So
Yeah.
I thought, oh shit, I don't really know how to move audio around the way I do with MIDI information. So I said, you know what, I'll just play some solos where I can kind of play it through. So, but now I know a lot more about recording guitar audio, and actually there's a big guitar related announcement coming really soon from my world, which is going to be, I think, pretty interesting for people. But anyway, but I did get to play a few guitar solos on the album myself. And yeah, and that's how those are the players involved. And I should say that Jimmy T mixed it as well. Jimmy T is also the recording engineer for Dream Theater, has been for years, and does monitor mixes for us when we're on the road. But Jimmy T also mixed my album, and I think he did a beautiful job.
Yeah, that is for sure. Now, can't wait to see that big announcement that you have about the guitar world. And do you think you'll get to work around more on guitars and maybe even somewhat more focused on guitars than on piano in the future? Think that's something that you would like to do?
Well, again, it's like a serious, I call it a serious hobby because, I'm not like, people shouldn't expect that I'm going to be playing guitar in a Dream Theater show. That's not going to happen.
Obviously.
I think the guitarist we have will do a fine job in that department. Um, but for my solo work and for my other things, yeah, like I really enjoy playing and it's fun for me and I'm taking it pretty seriously and who knows where it will go. So you could expect on my future solo albums that I'll do more, and especially after people hear about this little guitar announcement, if you will, that'll be happening within the next couple weeks or whatever. Um, I think people will be like, "Oh, that's a really, kind of cool and interesting." So,
Yeah, as I
yeah,
said, can't wait. Now you already
yeah.
mentioned the guests that you have in this album. One thing that I found really, really curious is that, in past albums you had like really important and renowned musicians playing, and in this one it's more underground musician, I think. Uh, well, except for the drummer, which obviously is Devin Townsend something. But why did you decide to choose these musicians in particular?
Well, I really wanted to find a singer that was going to be, going to kind of be symbiotic with my musical energy, and it was important to me to get somebody with a certain kind of sound, and vibe. So my friend Roy at Prog Report actually mentioned this guy Joe Payne to me. I'd never heard of him before, but he said, Jordan, is this guy Joe, and he's got a great voice, and he's not really that known, but he's really wonderful. You should meet him. He didn't know, he wasn't saying you should have him on your solo album, but you should meet him.
Mhm.
And so I ended up getting in touch with Joe, and we spoke about a bunch of different things, and I play on his album and him play on mine. Anyway, in our talks, finally, I said, "Hey, would you be interested to sing on my solo album?" And he said yes, and he had the time and the interest. And you know, it was interesting to me because I was thinking about some of my friends and different musicians, and voices are very subjective, right? One guy will love John Anderson's voice of Yes, another person's like, oh, I don't like his voice. Like, so it's hard to please everybody. But in this case, it was very important to please me, my album. So I found Joe, and I just thought he had a beautiful voice, and he's a great guy, and I love what he ended up bringing to my album. So I didn't, and I was excited about the fact that he wasn't like somebody like a household name. I heard about his group, the Enid, which was a prog band that had some success, I guess, more like in the underground progressive world in the UK. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of like how that happened. I was like, wow, got this great singer that just like, you know, I'm kind of helping to introduce him to my world. And Darby, as you said, yeah, Darby does people starting to really know who he is because of his work with Devin Townsend and now his work with me. But Steve Dadayan, yeah, another kind of underground. I wanted to create a band. I wanted to have a band vibe on this album. In my previous solo albums, it was more about me and then with a bunch of guests. That was kind of like the approach. This was a very different kind of. I was setting out to do something very different with this. I wanted it to feel like a band. So that's that.
Yeah, and do you think there will ever be any live dates with this band, with your solo project that now a band?
Yeah. I'd like there to be, but right now it's not, if we do it, it's not going to happen for a while because Dream Theater has this massive world tour coming up. But what's kind of cool is that, I don't know exactly what will happen in the future, but I could see taking this lineup and just having another album with these guys because it's such a pleasure to work with them all. And then after we do that, hey, maybe there'll be some time and we'll also have a little bit more catalog to work from.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds good. Well, Jordan, I think that's it. It was an honor to have you here. Would you like to send any message to your Portuguese fans?
I was just talking to my friend last night about how awesome Portugal is. They were saying, "Have you ever been to Portugal? We really love it." I said, "Yeah, I've been there. Done some really, I don't get to stay there too long, like a vacation mode, but I'll go and I'll take walks and I'll go down by the water and the beach, and I'll always have a really nice time." So I look forward to coming there again because it's one of the nice places to visit on our tour and feeling the energy of the people. Having Mike back in the band and this big show, and it should be a wild, crazy time. So let's do it.
Yeah, man, and I can't wait to see that show as well. Thank you so
Awesome.
much again. It was an honor to have you here, man. Uh,
Thank you, my friend. Thanks for your support as well on the new album.